Dan, what's up, man? Welcome to Dad Edge, my friend. Good to see you.
How you doing, man? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And it is Monday when this show releases, though. Happy July 21st. So,
Nice.
hey, let's start off with some fun questions. You good for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Favorite sport growing up?
Hunting. I don't consider that a sport, but that was my favorite pastime for sure. If it had to be a sport with a ball, football. There you go.
Okay. So, what do you like to hunt the most? And then what position did you play growing up in football?
Ducks and geese. So waterfowl. I grew up in North Dakota and the western side of Minnesota, and so I grew up with my family spread out in this like incredible duck hunting landscape. That was my passion as a kid. And I played center. I played offensive line. I was a Minnesota All-State
No
center
way.
years in a row. Yeah.
Dude, that's what my 16-year-old plays. He's the he's center for varsity. He's
Yeah.
been the center for the past 3 years, ever since Little League and freshman and JV, and now he's gonna be the varsity center.
Yeah, I wasn't mean enough to be a D lineman, but I was a pretty solid O lineman for sure.
No, man, there is something about being a center because you've gotta like, I mean, the whole play starts with you,
Yeah,
and then you gotta snap that ball right, and then you've got to be ready for the hit. So it's like you got a few more moving parts than the rest of your O line. So it's an important role.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was super
That's
fun.
awesome, man. How long did you play for?
Just I mean, I played in junior high and high school. I had some possibilities of going to play at college, but I'm not that tall of a guy, and they wanted to put a shit ton of weight on me, and I wanted to just kind of fuck off and travel and not play football. So I played just through high school.
How tall are you, if you don't mind me
Six
asking?
foot. And I
6
had
foot?
and I was carrying like 235, 240 on me already, and they wanted to put another like 50 pounds on me. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a very good idea.
So, my son is 5'9",
Yeah,
and we're wondering if this is might be as tall as he's gonna get.
yeah,
And he's like super stressed out about it. He's like, Dad, he's like, what if I can't play in college? Like, he's like, I'm gonna be if I'm 5'10" or less, like I might not start. So he's doing this thing right now, kind of like what you were talking about, where he's like literally packing on as much weight as he possibly can.
yeah.
And but yeah, he's very stressed out about it.
Yeah, man, yeah, I get it. Like, especially if that's the pathway that you see when you're a young man and you think that sports are, the best way to go with your life, like I fucking get it. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot of things not in your control that have to go right.
All right. Well, let's jump to another question. What was your favorite thing to do as a kid with your own dad?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think I'll fall back on my the answer to my other question, which was hunting. So we took a few trips, maybe one a year, out west in North Dakota, where we would go fishing and bird hunting. And I think those trips are like the highest highlight of my memories with my dad. Certainly not the only thing, but yeah, I mean that sticks out for sure. For
That's
some
cool. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I'm curious, and this is a really dumb question. Now that I know, are you a dog person or a cat person?
So I used to be a dog person for sure. We have both, but I have like strangely morphed into a cat person in the last
Really?
7 years. Yeah, yeah. Didn't know, I was not a fan at all, but then we got two cats because my wife loves cats. We got two brothers, Chuck Norris and John Claude Van Damme, and Jean Claude got eaten by a coyote.
Wait, are you being serious?
Yeah,
The cat got eaten by, and it
yeah,
was Jean Claude.
yeah. Jean Claude got eaten by a coyote in
Oh
California.
man, I'm so sorry.
But Chuck is the coolest. He's the coolest critter I've ever had. He's just fantastic, and he's way low maintenance. And we've actually had a hard time with dogs since we've had kids. It hasn't been all that fun. It hasn't been all that easy. So I'm going with Catman for sure.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
I'm actually not surprised that Chuck Norris is still, around because like if a coyote came after Chuck Norris, like I
you grab him
mean,
by the fucking tail and slam it.
it
Yeah,
probably would,
yeah.
it's just like Van Damme, like if you ask Seagal and the rest of those guys, like I mean, I know he's very skilled, but like he was kind of like they used to make fun of him like in the 90s.
Jean
Like
Claude. Oh yeah. I
yeah,
mean, he was
Seagal
my
and all those
hero.
guys did.
He was like my hero for a while.
Yeah.
Bloodsport, and I don't know, the one with the Kumite, is that Bloodsport? That was my
Yeah,
sure.
dude. You want to hear something funny about Bloodsport? So like we you and I are probably like right around the same age, but like, dude, that was like the best like martial arts movie. Like when you were in the 80s, like everyone was like, oh my God, Bloodsport, right? And that was before like obviously YouTube and all that. So like there was a part of you as a kid, like that's the way you actually thought fights went down, right?
Yeah,
And like I
yeah.
watched this movie, I watched Bloodsport about a month and a half ago with my kids.
Oh, cool.
And I was like freaking that was my favorite movie growing up, but I was dying. I was laughing so hard because like the whole he's like, "Ah!" Like he like he hit and like would just hold it. And I'm like, in a real fight, if you did that, you would die.
Yeah. I was in martial arts. I was in Taekwondo for like 12 years as a kid, and,
Dang.
so, yeah, we watched a lot of that over and over, but, that's actually well, we'll probably get into it, but that's something about my dad that he was, like, the biggest fan and supporter of my martial arts journey, and the dude always just jumped in on what I was doing and what we were doing, which was really pretty wonderful.
Well, yeah. So tell me about that. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, some dads are super involved. You know, when it comes to like some dads are like, "Hey, you're gonna do what I want you to do," but like, you know, you're gonna fulfill my dream that I wanted to fulfill. You know,
Yeah.
but your dad maybe not so. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, my dad he worked a lot. He wasn't around, nearly as much as my mom. He was involved, but, only to the extent that work would allow him to be involved. But, I guess to get into the story best, I wanna introduce this dude named Master Mike. Mike Armbrust was my martial arts instructor, and I grew up at this time, in a tiny town in North Dakota, like 650 people,
Wow.
700 people at the most, right? In the far northeastern corner of North Dakota, about 20 miles from Canada, like, in the middle of nowhere, like, flat as a pancake, just really removed from, I don't know, everything. And Master Mike drove into town, this little town, in a little two-seater red sports car. It just like, completely changed my life, man. He was such a huge figure and a mentor. And I think Dan Doty before Taekwondo was really meek and shy and tender and a bookworm and a mama's boy. And then post martial arts Dan Doty was had some of those same qualities, but was also a bit of a confident badass too, right? Like
That's
I
awesome.
really transformed a lot. So, but my dad, he he's just been an incredible cheerleader my whole life, right? So, in terms of showing up to my Taekwondo tests and I don't know, he would drive me to tournaments where I would, compete, and that continued through football and even into my adult life when I started doing very strange things in his world. Um, he he just consistently sort of like clapped and cheered and showed up for me as I went along the way. Which, as I get older, I really, really appreciate and understand the value of that more and more. Right? There's a lot of things I could say about my dad that were tough, but that's one that never wavered. He's just always been in my corner and showed it.
And did you grow up with siblings as well?
Yeah, I have one little brother. He's
Okay.
3.5 years younger.
And so was your dad like that with both of you guys?
Absolutely. As far as I know, as far as I can tell, my brother and I have had very different lives, and I can't venture to answer for him in that,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah, I'd be curious about my brother's answer to that.
It, and is your dad, is he still with us?
Yeah, yeah, very
Okay.
much so, very much.
And what's your relationship with him like now?
It's solid. I mean, it's interesting, man. He'll probably listen to this, right? But um, we had a really big kind of connection and opening for a couple years, right? So one of the things I've done is I had co-founded a company called EVRYMAN that did men's retreats and men's groups and things like that. And after years of inviting him to come along, he finally did, and it turned into this really big deal in my life and our family's life. And it created this opening of closeness and connection, like really authentic, sort of no holds bar connection, I suppose for a couple years. And then the pandemic hit, and we were stressed. A lot of things were going on. We had a bit of a big family, big fight in our family, and have repaired that and recovered that. But I think my dad and I have not sort of come back to the level of closeness we had. So maybe the answer is it's a little complicated. If I would give you a straight answer, it's like a little complicated, but um, we're in each other's lives a lot. And
Got it. Yeah. It's really fascinating. I'd really love to know, was there, and I know you founded Everyman and you hosted retreats, and you and I both know, being in this space, in the dad space, I've been in it for 10 years, and we're actually hosting our seventh retreat here in October. And those things are so powerful. There's something that is, that is an immersion event, right? Where you're away, you're off the grid, you're away from all the distractions. But I got to be honest, man. Like, I'm somewhat envious of you being able to do that with your dad. I would love to know, like, what were some of the, if you're cool to talk about it, I'd
yeah,
love just
yeah.
some of the breakthroughs that you guys had on that retreat that really made that stickiness between you guys.
Yeah, I'm happy to share, and this is really goes right to the heart of my work for the past 20 years on this planet. I'll give you a snapshot of like the actual event and what happened, and you can hear more. I think it's still up. I used to do the Everyman podcast. I forget which episode is it, but there's an episode where my dad and I talked and recorded an episode after this event.
Really?
It's worth listening to.
Yeah.
Got a lot of feedback from men, sort of remarking on never having heard a conversation with quite as much intimacy as my dad and I shared on that. But um, here's what it looked like. Right, we led these weekend retreats. They were very, very intensive. Very much created a safe place for men to really get very honest and real with themselves and each other. And my dad came, and we could both tell coming into the weekend, it was it was intense. There was a lot of energy sort of built up into it. And the weekend was going on, and I was leading, right, but I intentionally put my dad in a different small group, so we weren't interfacing directly all the time. But on Sunday morning, so we started Friday night, had all day Saturday. Sunday morning, my co-facilitators and co-leaders started the morning by bringing everybody. So we're in this barn, right? 80 men. That's how many men are here in a giant fucking circle. And they have myself and my father come to the middle, and they sort of facilitated a little process where we were back to back, and then at some point they had us turn face to face and look in each other's eyes. And it ended up probably being the most powerful experience of healing in my whole life, which has been constituted by a lot of attempts at healing. And my knees got cut out, like I literally sort of felt my knees, and it felt like what happened was the backlog of all that ever went unsaid and unfelt between my dad and I, which was a lot, you know, all came rushing through at one moment. And without going into details on why necessarily, well, I think I would, if I had forecasted that moment, I probably would have forecasted that I felt a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of um, all kinds of things. But what I really felt, and what he felt too, was just the amount of unexpressed love that we had for each other. And it fucked us up, and it fucked up everybody in that circle. And I still get calls today about that moment from men that were there. And it was this firsthand experience of why I started working with men in the first place. It was the exact thing. I started my work with men in my young 20s as a wilderness therapy guide, and I was out there guiding groups of adolescent boys. I know you have some boys this age, and these were boys who were either sent away for therapeutic purposes or correctional purposes, right? And I would spend months in the field with these guys. And then I got to experience what it was like to be with these young men and then have their dads come out into the field, into these groups, and spend time with us. And so here I am, 22 years old, and like I get this like close up behind the curtains look at the relationships between boys and their dads. And what I saw, first of all, was immense walls that were between father and son, huge barriers of energy, of love, of communication. And I saw it between all of them, right? And then I saw through our processes what happened when those walls came down. And all of the societally built, all of the conditioned ways of being that boys and men have about keeping things inside and not allowing our love and our expression out. I got to see what happened when a young man, when that shit went out the window. And, you know, 17-year-old thug would be like sobbing in his dad's arms, expressing how
Wow.
much he meant to him. And that's what kickstarted my career. And then I got to do it with my own dad like 16 years later.
Mm,
That's the heart of why I've done what I do.
man. I mean, first of all, so it had to have been being a wilderness guide and seeing those breakthroughs at such a young age, right? Because we think about when we're 22, like how we see the world, and to see things like that at that age. I mean, that number one, that's got to be so powerful. But then to fast forward 16 years later, to have a similar experience even with your own dad, knowing kind of like what you saw over the years. I mean, that's something that you guys are never ever going to forget. Like that, you take that one to your deathbed,
Yeah.
and it's a core memory.
Oh yeah. And it rewrote a lot of core memories, or it inflected a lot of meaning upon core memories. It helped
Yeah,
me see my dad and our entire family history in a very different light.
that that's really really fascinating. I think that. What do you think if you could gift that experience to just other men? What do you and it sounds like you have, but what are some other moments that you've heard or other experiences that maybe other men have had with their own dads, maybe breakthroughs like that that have been just incredibly healing?
Yeah, I mean, I've done I've done a lot of work facilitating connection between fathers and sons intentionally, right? Sometimes at retreats and sometimes through my coaching practice and different things. But um, I guess a few things. One I would name, which is pretty recent, and I'll keep it confidential, obviously. But one of my clients, his father has been gravely ill in the hospital, and he showed up. This guy, the son, showed up to a group that I've been running and shared this, and was sort of challenged or urged or offered the feedback by other men in the group that this would be the time. This would be the time to say what you have left to say. Um, and he did it. And he did it. And he, again, it's almost too sacred to talk about, so I don't want to share too much. But he came back the next week after finding the courage to get past, the resistance and the fear, to open up and really, really tell his father what was in his heart.
Mm,
And, just to give you a heads up and the listeners a heads up, what often is in there to say to dad has two pieces. It's kind of like one piece usually starts with fuck you, and one piece starts with I love you. And I think that's why it's often pretty intense. It's a lot to feel because it's often very what feels like they could be opposing or competitive feelings or forces in there, right? There's probably a lot of anger and sadness and everything that was wrong that we can pile onto dad, right? And most of us at some point or another do that. And then underneath that or alongside that is usually just think of, I mean, think Larry, think of like one of your boys, like pure want, need, and desire for your attention and your love, right? Think of how fucking strong that is. And I think that now as adults we still have that for our own fathers, but we've occluded it, we've piled shit on top of it, right? It's not that pure, it's not that strong, but it's still there. And so it's just a lot to hold. It's a lot to feel. One other sort of place that I think is a really good time for this is when we start to have kids. It doesn't have to be at the first kid, but particularly when we're expecting or we're becoming fathers. One of the exercises I have my guys do a lot is, see how much we can learn about our dads when they were first having kids. Learn about their life, learn about who they were. And if they're around and if they're open for it, get in there and ask some questions, right? Like one of the biggest questions I think that is super helpful to know is like what was the main what was your job, man? Like the way that you thought about fatherhood, what was it? How did you what did being a good dad mean to you? How did you think about heading into this? Um, that's just one of the ways to get into it, but I think it's a really ripe time to start understanding your father more.
Tell me more about, the power of that yin and yang,
Mm.
meaning like that F you and then I love you, right? I can understand how that would be healing, and you would actually need to do both. And both, depending on the person and the relationship, would be equally hard, right? But what do you think the power of doing both of those things in a conversation like that would be?
Well, the power of it is that it just honors what's actually true, right? And so I think what we need to do is take it. We need to build more dimensionality into our understanding of this, right? So you might think that it's just a binary, like, oh, angry with dad or love dad is like somehow tied on a sliding scale. It's just not. It's separate. It's just separate feelings. And we are the way that we're sort of society and our families and life has encultured men is a very, very narrow bandwidth of emotional reality and energetic reality, right? So it's changing and it's a little different for everybody, but it still is the case that most men, particularly of our generation and a couple down, maybe our kids are starting to change a little bit, but we are not given healthy examples and models and mentoring on how to be what to do with our anger, how to be angry, how to stand up for ourselves, how to own our space. We're not shown how to express love. People around us aren't expressing love very fully. We're not shown how to grieve. We're not shown how to sort of own our shame and own our truth, right? So there's just this whole spectrum of human experience that we're just not really shown the ropes on, right? It's like, it's like maybe when we're kids, maybe there's this super fucking toy that's actually a helicopter and a bike and a submarine and all of these different ways, but what we're given is just a little scooter, right? So we really kind of only know one way for the most part. So why it's powerful to hold the yin and the yang of the light and the dark is that it's just honest. It's just real. All of that is true within us. And so are all of these other things. And so when men get the itch or the urge to go beyond the narrow confines of the life that they were given, then it just simply takes practice. It's just like anything else. We all have the bandwidth in us to experience any of these parts of life. The intense the intense like anger or fu part is only one flavor. The oh my god, I love my dad so much, I need him, I miss him is only one other. But those happen to be really poignant and seemingly ubiquitous energies around dad. So I don't know, maybe I hopefully that wasn't too roundabout of an answer, but um, it's just that they're both real. And when something
Yeah.
is real, if you don't acknowledge it, it doesn't go. It's not like it goes away. You know.
I really like that. To be honest, I've never really thought of it that way. I've always thought it's like it's one way or the other, or you have one conversation about one thing, and it's either the yin or the yang. But having, I could really understand being put in a situation like that. That how healing that would really be, right? Because you're basically like you're cleaning out the closet, like all the cobwebs, all the things in there that have collected dust, and they're dingy and they're not fun to look at. They're not fun to even go in there, but like you clean it out, and then you can and then you get that renewal, right? And
Well, exactly, and it's so deeply like powerful, like going into this when we regard our own fathers, because you know, to some extent we are them, right? To some extent, biologically, physiologically, but also just whether they were there or not there, our life is truly a construction based off of whatever they did or didn't offer us, right? And so to be able to understand my dad and the things that I was angry about, the way he spoke to my mom, the sort of like seething undertone of like annoyance or aggression, the whatever it is, and then the stuff that I truly cherish, love about him, how he showed up. He always loved us, right? So there's both, but why this is so important to why it can be so important to grapple with is because if I don't, that same stuff is most likely alive in me too. And it is, right? So my dad's and also just I want to throw this in there as I get older and learn more and sort of deepen my own understanding of the world, right? Like that fu, that anger to dad starts to change because it's not like he was just an asshole. He was, well, and I don't share too much, but he was hurting
Yeah.
pretty badly, and didn't have anywhere to go, right? And if he had had the opportunity that I had had as a young man to open up and get support and go to therapy and get help, then I guarantee he would have, right? Like we're on the same fucking team, he and I, right? We're trying to move this ball forward together, um, and I'm really grateful for all of it, that he brought. So yeah, I mean, this stuff runs deep, we have a lot of feelings toward dad, and they are a really sort of potent portal to our own inner world if we want to take that journey.
I agree, man. It's seeing maybe the human being, not just the dad, perhaps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had Gary John Bishop on your podcast?
No, no.
Do you know who he is?
Uh-uh. Uh-uh.
So he's the author of Unfuck Yourself and Stop Doing That Shit. Like he's got like I think 8 books now out, but he's got a series and he's a New York Times bestselling author with that. But he just released a book on parenting,
Hmm.
and it's all about the title is Grow Up, Become the Parents or Become the Parent Your Kid Deserves. And the fascinating thing about that parenting book is it's actually kind of not a parenting book. It's like a you book. It's like actually like you dealing with your own demons as a parent. Like there's actually very little like quote unquote traditional parenting advice in that book.
Yeah.
But he talks about the very thing that you're talking about here, which is all of us kind of have this wound, when it comes to our parents. And if we're talking about dads, because this is dad stuff, we have a father wound. But like he even talks about in the book, he's like, for a long time, like I would blame my dad, for the things he didn't do and hold my grudge against him. And I'm a victim and this and that and the other thing. He's like, but as soon as I like stepped back and he's like, when I became a father, because he's got 3 boys, and he's like, and I really, really started doing deep work, in self development. And I really looked at my dad as a human being and not just a dad. He's like, my dad grew up in northern Scotland because that's where Gary's from. He's from Scotland. And his dad at the time, Scotland was at war and they shipped his dad off at 9 years old, I think to Canada.
Yeah.
And like his dad was also raised by 2 deaf parents. And so he's 9 years old, he's raised by 2 deaf parents. He's shipped off to family that he's never met, but he's supposed to live with them now for safety. And like that was traumatic for his dad. And then there's a lot of other things too that happened. But he's like, can you imagine? Like he painted this picture in the book, being put on a train at 9 years old, you're waving to your family and you never think you're going to see him again.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what's even really going on because you're like 9. And he's like, for the first time, like I looked at my dad, not as my dad, but like this 9-year-old boy who had to go through horrific experiences growing up into his adolescence and teens, like being without his own family, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of a war. So like just things like that, I think that really probably hit home.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a really bad joke about my dad being abducted by aliens when he was 9. But have, have you seen Outer Range, that show with Josh Brolin?
No,
Oh
I
man,
haven't.
oh man,
Good.
it's worth checking out. Yeah,
What's it about?
it's about a dude. Well, I don't want to give it away. It's easy to give. It's about a rancher in Wyoming, played by Josh Brolin, who goes out on his west pasture and finds like a hole, like a giant like eternal hole in the ground.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's I won't even say more than that. It's a sci-fi western. It's freaking awesome.
I'm gonna see that then.
Yeah.
Hope I'm flying out to LA today, so maybe that'll be on my flight. Who
It's on
knows?
Amazon, yeah. That's
Oh, okay, outer range. Okay, we'll have a link in the show notes for you guys. No, I'm kidding. Um, let's. So thank you for sharing that, man. That was for all the guys out there who might have a father wound, or who pretty much all of us have to some degree. That was really helpful. Just to look at dad in maybe a different light. So I appreciate that. You have two kids yourself. You have two boys and a girl.
3. Yep, 3 kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Two boys and a girl.
yep.
And talk to me about, I only have boys, and talk to me about how you go about fathering your boys, and then how you go about fathering your daughter, the similarities and the differences too.
Yeah. So I've spent, most of my life around dudes of all ages. It's just how it's happened. And what I recognize, I mean, so first of all, parenting my boys was really, I don't know, didn't feel like any strings or barriers. It didn't feel like complicated in any way. It just felt very straightforward. And then my daughter, so my daughter's 2.5. Her name's Wilderness. We named her appropriately. She's very wild. What I noticed that was different was just sort of this. It wasn't deep, it wasn't big, but a little fear, just a general fear, for the same type of intimacy and normality that I had with my boys, right? So um, I felt myself hanging back a little bit at the it didn't last long, right? But in that first chunk of time, I'm like, oh my god, um, this is not what I'm used to. And but luckily that melted away very quickly. And I don't know that I'm gonna have a super satisfying answer here, because so far I don't not that I don't notice a difference. I mean, she's very different, right? The way she moves is different. The way she interacts and talks is very different. And not just different because she's her own human, but because she's a very seemingly feminine little girl, right? um I guess what I would just say, it's just like such a joy. I always wanted a sister when I was a kid. Like, I remember this feeling of just sort of like had brothers, and I was always around male friends and stuff, and just sort of this yeah, not by any not in any weird way, but just in proximity, right? Like, I just didn't have the proximity. And then most of my proximity to women in my life, I've had some female friends around the years, some of them very close and deep. But a lot of my female connection has been through girlfriends and my wife over the years, right? And so um just that familial closeness, it's just been a joy, man. And it like seems to there's this lovely sense of balance that we found in our, and I'm not saying it would be out of balance if we just had boys or anything, but um that's a good question. I don't have like a simple, like, super salient answer other than, man, she's just a fucking joy, and I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to be her dad, you know.
That's really cool, man. You were raised with a brother. You have two other boys. I find I was just genuinely curious about that question because number one, I have no experience with daughters,
Mhm.
and it's so now my two older ones, they have girlfriends, so they bring their girlfriends around, and one of my boys has had the same girlfriend for 2.5 years. And what I find is, and this is just my own experience, like she'll open like this weekend. Um, she was she was pretty stressed out. Her grandpa is going in for a really dangerous spinal surgery, and she was over at our house, and she was talking to us about it, just and I found her like dealing with emotions way differently as a teenage girl versus my teenage sons, and I found myself lost, to be honest. Like, even like, I know how to be empathetic, I know how to validate somebody's feelings, but it's almost like I don't have that experience with a daughter, and I could tell it was really hard for her, and
Mm,
she was somewhat borderline emotional about it. And I found myself like, what do I say? Like, how do
mhm.
I support her? This is like just very different energy than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And it's just it was just a fascinating experience. That's one of the reasons I was so curious about it.
Yeah, man. Well, I just because that is my training and background, like very, very specifically, right? So, just to name it, right? So, being empathetic, saying the right thing, that's the to me, that's just the door. That's just like the entrance to the realm, right? That's the very beginning, and I don't know the situation, right? But I think that just to say it for your viewers, what it takes to go on that full ride, right? Um, is is really just to soften and allow for your own emotions and stay present with them, right? So allowing for what feelings come up in you, and even the term, I'm guessing if it felt like she was borderline emotional, my guess is she was probably holding back some of it, right? But the truth is she was probably being very, very emotional, right? And so, the fully emotional realm is not a gendered experience. It's we all have that capacity, and it in my understanding and belief set, it attributes to an immense amount of addiction, suicide, and a lot of the harm that happens with men. And so I'm not saying that men in their natural state would go around crying everywhere and being overly emotional, but um, there is a pretty big gap in our capacity and skill set, not because it's not there, just because it hasn't been developed, right? And this is a book that maybe most men might not think about picking up or might have some resistance to picking up. But there's a book called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, who's one of the most revered feminist writers of all time. And in the book A Will to Change, it's basically like a love letter to men, and is an entire book based on how much she loves men. And in it, she describes the harm that has happened to boys in pinching off their natural areas of connectivity, of friendship and emotion, and this sort of like life force that we all have. And I didn't expect to go there right now, but I feel called to name it and to share it, because um, it's not the only area for men to grow, but it is a life changing experience when we do.
Very cool, man. I have not heard of that book, but I'm gonna have to check that out. I want to ask you one more question before we move on. You said that, so I think you said validating someone's emotional state is the doorway, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about beyond the doorway.
So it's surrendering into what you actually feel, and not just naming and sort of like interacting, but actually like so I what I could imagine in that situation is not only expressing the validation of her feelings, but allowing your body to actually go there, right?
Mhm.
So it's a physiological validation, and not one that happens just over a moment, but it's like it's actually, if she's a train and she has an emotional train, it's getting on the fucking train with her and surround and like letting go of control enough to actually go on that journey, and just sticking with her as you do it. And
Mm.
that's a simple way to say it, but it's also remarkable how, and this is what every man still does. So if this is of this, I do some of this work with dads and stuff, but that is the everyman work in a nutshell, is how we can slow down and actually attune and get out of our heads about it, and actually be there present in an emotional space with other people, which goes a long way.
Do you think that that's a really uncomfortable spot for most men?
For about 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and then it's like this magical fucking skill,
Mhm.
and it doesn't take long. But yeah, it's terrifying.
It
It's
is.
absolutely terrifying.
I've heard that, and I can't remember what podcast guest told me this, but it made a lot of sense. I'd love to get your response to this. So, like when we see loved ones in pain, right? Like, so our wife is angry, she's frustrated, she's sad, whatever. kids are really sad or upset or they're angry, most of the time we want to just automatically fix it, right?
Mhm.
Because we want to, because those emotions that we see, it's almost like it's actually overwhelming to us. Like we almost, because quite frankly, like most men, we don't necessarily have the emotional IQ
Mhm.
that we could potentially have. And that's not, it's not a ding on men, right? That's not like putting men down. That's just the fact that, like, I think society and our culture has told men that's what you should do. And that's what we've have always kind of followed. Like I remember growing up, and if I started to cry at 6 years old, my stepdad would be like, babies, only babies cry, stop crying, like
Yeah.
constantly. Like there was no tolerance for it. But I think that was more on him, not me, right? Because it was like he couldn't deal with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like we automatically just want to fix something or give a solution, because it's like if I could just like quickly take away this person's pain,
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel a discomfort with this situation either. And I'm doing what I do best as a man, which is provide and protect and contribute and all those things. But I think it's hard for most men to get into that space.
It's very hard, and I like to think of it as appropriate for the time and place, right? So I think of my generations past, right? So one generation, makes the trip over the Atlantic. It settles in North Dakota, where it's scratching out an existence by growing potatoes and having chickens, and like I just don't think that time and place was probably. I think grin and bear it, don't cry, step up was probably the right response. I don't know this, right? But I could see that being the case. And I could see in my dad's time that maybe being shifting a little bit now with my kids out there from my life experience, like, our role as dad is to be a protector. But like, let's be honest, right? Like we live in the woods in Maine. Um, there are things that could hurt our kids, but the chances are very, very, very slim. We have a safe, healthy life. And so now, what I think my kids need protecting from is the ingrained societal and familial and interpersonal things that I'm carrying and that we're carrying, right? I actually think like the best way for me to protect our kids is to be emotionally healthy and to be present, and right, like it's a different ball game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like for me to this, like to walk downstairs after this call and say, Duke, you can't cry anymore, man, it's for babies. It's just like you like that's what my kids need protecting from, right? Like that, like there's just no way that makes sense to me, right? It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. So
Yeah.
um it's these are different times, man. Things are changing so fast. Things are transforming so fast. And I don't know that I'm got my finger right on the pulse. I'm doing my best, right? But I think about, it's just a different, and it depends on what part of the country you're from, depends on like what your cultural background is, your religion. Like it's not a uniform thing here, but there does seem to be a shift towards um acknowledging the other parts of our boys, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, I wouldn't be here saying this fairly relatively unpopular thing to say had I not fucking been doing this for 20 years literally and seeing like the most incredible, literally life-changing things happen. Like the most like it is a big fucking deal. Otherwise I would do something else at this point, right?
Mm.
I would probably rather get a lobster boat and go lobster fishing. But like, this is really important.
Yeah, I love this. I love the fact that you are bringing this to the forefront, and the fact that you have 2 decades of experience seeing the other side of this, is really, really important.
Yeah.
Just a really quick share, like I was tempted yesterday. My 10-year-old was at a birthday party, and it was at a birthday party where they had like bowling and arcades and all this at this location. And I showed up after him being there for like 2.5 hours, and he was playing video games. And from what I could see from a distance, he was having a blast like the whole time of his life. And then he came up to me, and he's one of those kids. He's not dramatic. He's not going to cry unless something's like really, really, itching at him. And he saw me, and he came up to me, and he kind of like walked up to me slowly. And I just kind of like looked at him. I was like, "Are you okay?" and he just completely crumbled. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, what's going on? And he's come to find out, um, a couple of kids that were making fun of him, and he had bottled it up for 2 hours and didn't know how to handle it and just like completely
Mhm.
melted. And I was like, and of course, like, he's 10, and some of the names that they were calling him, it wasn't a huge deal. Like, you look at it and they're like, well, there are way worse things they could do. Like, they were just, they were calling him like, they're like, don't be an idiot, like, and that kind of thing. And, like, it wasn't like names that were like super below the belt or derogatory or like things like that.
Mm.
And, so, in his world, it killed him because
Yeah.
he's like, "These are, like, my best friends, and they're making fun of me." Like, I don't understand that, and so, like, I kinda did the same thing, but I had to, like, talk myself out of, like, wanting to fix it for him. There was a part of me that's like, "Oh, dude, it's not that big of a deal, like, boys will be boys," that kinda thing. But instead, I was like, "Oh, dude, like, man, that is so frustrating." Like, I understand, like, how hard that is sometimes, especially if you're trying to have a good time, and then you feel like people are, you know, pinpointing you, and they're just, like, making fun of you, and then everybody makes fun of you, and, like, that's a horrible feeling, man.
Yeah.
And the more that I validated him, the more he calmed down, which was great. It was almost like this connection thing. But as a dude, I just wanted to be like, "Come on, man. Like, it's all right. Rub some dirt on it. Like, give it back to him." Like, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting how we kind of have to override that situation, and we know that
Yeah.
that's not really being effective.
I mean, I think there's room for both, man. Like I attempt to, both raise my kids to be tough and also to not, turn off those valves, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have learned more about the natural cycle of emotions from my kids than anywhere, than any of my other work, right? Where I showed up to work, like, both my middle son and my daughter have hot tempers, right? And like those tempers quickly boil over into tears sometimes too, right? But
Yeah.
the amazing thing is that if you just like, for my son, if I just get down and just like scoop him up and like hold him for just, it's oftentimes just a couple seconds. It comes out, he recharges back in the,
Yeah.
it's like they come and they go. When you don't, if you don't mess with them, then they have their life. They have these natural cycles and they go through, and they do something. There's a purpose for that, right? It's not just something to be annoyed about. It's how we are built. Emotions are the language of human connection. They are the physiological language of human connection, and they're like a rebalancing, resetting mechanism too, right? I mean, and I think most of us probably know this, whether we want to admit to it or not. But like, you feel pretty damn good after you have a cry you've needed to have, right? If something's been holding on for a long time and you finally get it out, or you have a therapist, or holding stuff in doesn't work. It's maladaptive. It's fundamentally not a good strategy. So
Yeah.
again, not saying we need to go cry everywhere, but
Right.
um, and we need to be tough too, man. And so
Yeah,
that
we do.
it's not an either or. It's not a sliding scale. It's not you're either emotional or tough. It's like, come on, let's be both. Let's we could do that. I'm tough as hell and I'm an emotional as hell. That's for sure. You know?
I think it is good to have a balance of both. And it's good to teach the balance of both as a dad. You talk about like picking up your son and hugging him. I just heard this. Did you hear about this? What happens during the 6-second hug?
Yes, I think
Okay.
yeah, I think we saw the same Instagram meme, right? I think it's
Yeah.
20-second hug or 6-second kiss, and I don't kiss
Yep.
my boy for 6 seconds.
Right. Yeah. I was going to get to the wife one here in a second, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oxytocin gets released, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Gottman, and yeah, we saw the same one, and he talks about like if you really want to create connection with your wife, it's the 6-second kiss, not the peck on the lips, like really quick. It's like 6 seconds, and then the same thing with your kids is the 6-second hug, because
Okay.
oxytocin gets released with the kids. Like when you hug them for 6 seconds. Like, obviously, you hug your wife too, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, the 6-second interaction like that is the one that actually is the bonding, like oxytocin release, which is interesting.
Yeah, my sense is the kids are gonna, at least there's a tendency towards both toughness and emotions, and I'm just on an ongoing study too, you know.
Yeah, I think
Mm,
we all are, right?
yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to talk about you have a brand new course out now for expectant fathers, which by the way, now that I have an 18-year-old, I wish you would have released this like 18 years ago because I'll never forget, man, being a first expectant father.
Yeah.
Uh, I I was I remember when my wife was pregnant and like deep down, like, yes, I was excited and yes, I was happy. But dude, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I was freaking out. I was like, what am I about ready to step into? I don't know if you were like that with your first or not, but man, I was.
I was scared, but I was also super fired up, right? Like I was ready. I was freaking ready. We were ready to go. So I think the excitement clouded over the fear a little bit, but um I'm so stoked about doing this course. It's called Fatherhood Ready, and the way I like to introduce it is that um fatherhood is it blows my mind that we don't talk about it, we don't train for it, we don't give education for it. It's the biggest job in our lives. I'm guessing you firmly agree with that. It's the biggest job in my life, and it's like you go your whole life without playing football, and then you go to the hospital and they hand you a baby and it's game time in the Super Bowl and you're on the field, right?
Oh my
And it's
God.
like
Yeah.
you've never taken a snap in your life, right? It's like, what is that? Why would we not prepare for the most important thing in our life? And so, we've built a really robust course, man, and it's based on um, three main pillars. One is pregnancy, birth, and postpartum preparation, right? So you got to get your shit together. You got to get your ducks in a row. You got to learn about it. You got to learn how to be a good partner and all that. That's kind of like the first box to check. The second is the personal growth element. So similar to the gentleman you said who wrote this book about parenting, about self growth, right? And it is a rite of passage to become a father, and it is an opportunity for us to grow up in ways that we've never had before. And so we have a whole sort of arc of self exploration. And then the third pillar is relational strength, right? So we offer a whole module about how to strengthen your relationship in preparation for this. And we're doing it as a self-paced online course. We're going to be doing cohorts every 2 months or every quarter. Um, and Yeah, I'm really fired up about it because there's some things out there, but there's not very much, and what we found hasn't like met our standards. So I'm pretty excited to really offer this to the world.
Man, I'm so jealous. I really am because like for all you new dads out there, even if this is your second or third kid that's coming, go pick up this course because this is exactly what we need. I love that analogy too. Like you've never taken a snap, but this is the Super Bowl. That's exactly the way I felt. I was like, man, like I remember sitting there thinking to myself before our first kid, I was like, I have a 4-year degree, in sports medicine and a minor in nutrition. I've been in medical device sales. At that point in time, I'd been in medical device sales for 7 years. And I think about like the months of training that we had to have before they even allowed us to step foot in the OR with a surgeon.
Yeah.
But it's like you need. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin, and I think that might have
Long,
been Keanu Reeves' first movie. You
uh-huh.
remember that? Where
Long
he's
time ago.
Oh, dude, he's got this killer line. He's like, you need a license to drive a car. Hell, you need a license to catch a fish. But they'll let anybody become a father. Like, and it's so
Yeah.
true. And it's just like, oh yeah, here's a baby. Go have fun with it. It's
Yeah.
it's wild, isn't it?
Oh, it's so crazy, man. It's yeah, I mean, I want somebody to prove me different, right? But like, it literally blows my mind how little we talk about it,
Yeah,
how little support there is, and things are changing. I mean, maybe this is part of what it is. Things are changing right now.
yeah,
So men that are now becoming dads have a very, very different set of roles and responsibilities than our dads did. Like it's a night and day difference, and it's
yeah,
changing by the day, right? And so some of these, you know, basic inner skill sets, even of communication and well, let me just say this: like the fact of dads being the birth partner, to basically be mom's main support in the birth, that's fucking brand new on a human scale, right? That's in human history. that's new as of like 60 years ago. And it's only really becoming like the thing now, and that's just one little part of it. But I don't know. I think it's good news for us guys. I think it's giving us an opportunity to become more human and to become more of ourselves and to um, not get locked in this little narrow box of what men are supposed to be here for and how we engage with the world. I think it's really good news, and I just think it's an awesome opportunity for dads to grow up, man. To well, not just that, but to have the relationships with our families that we actually deeply
Yeah.
love. It's joyful. There's so much good here if we lean into it.
I agree. And the cool thing too is there's, with a click of a button, there's resources like what you've created here, which is awesome. As you say, the birth coach thing, my kids and I were in Colorado last week, and we were on the way back from Red Feather Lakes, which is like a 2-hour drive back to the Denver airport. We were listening to Jim Gaffigan, and my kids were just hysterically laughing at like some of his stuff. But he's like, I was even my wife's birth coach, which is basically, if you were to understand what that means, I was just standing there terrified. So he's like, there was so much screaming, I actually woke up. But no, it's true though. Like I remember being in the birth room with the delivery room with my wife, and I'm like, do I say push? Do I like comfort her? Is she gonna kill me? Like, not knowing what to expect or what to even do. But yeah, it's like, especially those first few months, man. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're so lost and you're so sleep deprived, you can't think straight. So I love the fact that you put this out in the world. Where can guys find this course?
Yeah, fatherhoodready.com. Very, very straightforward. Yeah, it should be live. I mean, yeah, this is coming on July. It's super live for sure. It's
Yeah.
coming out, Father's Day this year.
You said fatherhoodready.com.
Yep.
Got it. That's all. I mean, that's great, man. Like I'm actually surprised that wasn't taken, because that's a good one.
Yeah, I was surprised too, and it said $20. I expected maybe a bigger price tag on it.
Yeah, really, right? That's awesome. Um, as we sign off here today, I would really love for you to just hit on marriage just a little bit. You've been married for how long?
10 years, almost 10 years.
Okay. So I think this would be a good, appropriate question to close out with. If you were to sit down with yourself 11 years ago, like call
Mhm.
yourself on the phone and be like, hey, Dan, I'm going to take you out to dinner. It's me from the future, 11 years down the road. I'm going to give you some advice about marriage that will change your life and change how you operate. You're sitting there. What would you say to yourself?
I would say your tendency is going to be to give your work 110% and your kids 110%. But if you don't give your marriage 110%, then you're in trouble, dude. Um, that's what I'd say.
So you don't buy into marriage is 50-50?
It's 100.
Yeah, I
150,
agree.
150 maybe.
I agree, man.
Yeah, I just mean that it's I think it's been unfortunately easy for me to sort of coast or take advantage of the situation. But it's just so natural for me to lean into work with everything I have, so natural for me to show up for my kids with everything that I have. But I have to be really intentional about doing the same for my marriage, and when I do it,
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference.
100%, man. I agree. I find when Jessica and when we tend to get complacent or lazy, that's when like disconnection happens. And like we always use the term we're spinning in different orbits.
Mhm.
And that doesn't feel great. But as soon as like we, hit the gas on like, hey, let's start paying attention here. Like, let's start like dating again. Let's start like talking on deeper levels again. Let's start helping each other more. Let's start actually kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Let's actually start being better friends to each other.
yeah,
Like makes a huge difference.
yeah, totally.
So, well, I know we can find your course at fatherhoodready.com, but what about social media? And if guys want to connect with you after hearing the show?
Yeah, on social media, I just changed my handle to Fatherhood Unlocked. Um,
Okay.
that's where I am on social media, and I have a website too for my coaching work. It's just Dan@dandoty.com, or I'm sorry, dandoty.com. But you can email me too, Dan@dandoty.com.
God, you're gonna get so many spam emails now. You're gonna get like, Target ads and Home Depot. I'm kidding. We can edit that out if you want. But no, Dan, this was awesome, man. I know I was on your show not too terribly long ago. I just felt a really incredible just connection with you just from like this fatherhood mission thing and this manhood mission thing. And I so appreciate what you're putting in the world, man.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
you
thanks, man.
bet. Gents, head on over to the dadedge.com/484 for this show. Let's support Dan. Go check out his course. Go connect with him on social media. We need more guys like Dan doing work like this, who's got just a heart of gold and a heart for this. So, Dan, from my heart to yours, thank you again for what you're doing in the world. Keep doing it. And by the way, if you ever want to launch a course for preteens or teens, like I'd be the first in line to buy that
Yeah,
one. So
totally.
yeah, awesome, man. Thank you for coming on.
All right, take care.